We are joined now with a certified counsellor in family and relationships, Yvonne Kramer. So she'll be up here to chime in on questions that, maybe they need help on. So she'll be chiming in tonight. So we're going to pick up where we left off with Sunny and Rachel. So my first question to you, it's a little bit of a cute question, but how did you know your partner was the one?
How did I say it?
Yeah, just quickly. For me, it was a gut feeling. I don't even know if that's real, but yeah, that sort of thing. And I remember seeing her, across the masses of the young people, and I thought, man, that's the one.
Oh,
or something
nice.
like that. Do you think that? Anyway, that's how it played out in my mind. But I just had this feeling. I don't know if that's the best way to go about choosing your spouse, but that was the initial. But it was substantiated, I suppose, over time as we got to know each other a little bit more. So the feeling turned into something a little bit more neocortex guided.
Awesome. And Rachel, do you have something?
Yeah, mine was a lot different. Mine wasn't feeling based. So I was in a conversation with God. So I said earlier that I met him the second time I ever went to church at a youth rally.
Yeah.
And the week before, so this is going into a very small part of my testimony, it won't take long, but I had this conversation, Pastor Adventist church, I could go to church. And then I was like, sorry, churchies who grew up in church, I didn't. I thought, there are only going to be geeky people at church. But I heard God say, trust me. And I thought, okay. So met someone who happened to be his ex-girlfriend. And
okay.
And then she introduced us, and she, and so we hit it off from there. So he entered my conversation with God.
Wow,
so.
That's awesome. Okay, so knowing you guys outside of this, you guys are a very busy couple, and just watching you guys, I get tired just watching your relationship. You're running the Heritage College Narre Warren campus and Officer campus. You're working, and you're also managing your kids. And I know teenagers, they can be a little bit cheeky and get up to mischief, so I think that's a job in itself. And I know my mum's definitely nodding her head at the back there because she so agrees. But my question to you is, how have you maintained intimacy and chemistry amongst the busyness of life?
That's a good question, Ella. For me, the intimacy is more about the relationship you have and that you build. So I'll just give a phrase, swing time. Swing time is very important. We got this phrase from reading a book, Escape to God by Jim Hohenberger. So if you ever get a chance to read it, fantastic idea of making sure you develop a time and you put boundaries around a specific time where you and your wife can get on and it was, for them, it was a swing. It was every day. You get on the swing and you just spend time just talking to each other and whatever that may look like.
They lived in the country and their son built a swing. We don't have a son who's built us a swing. So for us, it'll look like us waking up at 6 a.m. and having those 10-minute talks. For us, it looks like we are driving to work. So we are blessed to be able to work with each other. Some people don't get that. Like, you guys are crazy. You live with each other. Why do you want to work with each other? But we love it. It's a blessing. Yeah, it's a blessing. Yeah, it's a blessing.
It's a blessing. It's a real blessing. Going to the supermarket is our date time. Now, that may seem really crazy. It's pretty sad. But shopping at Coles is swing time for us. We've told this year we made a plan. Thursday night, that's our date night.
Not at Coles.
But not at Coles. That's a real date night. So we have to organise an actual date where we go somewhere. And we're at a time now we can tell the children, we're out of here. And the older ones have to look after the younger ones. And we go. and without any guilt, because we used to have a lot of guilt leaving the home. Oh no, the kids. She didn't. I always felt guilty. But we now can leave the children and make sure we have that time, because that develops the intimacy later.
Yeah.
By the way, petals, flower petals, don't work. You know how some people sprinkle flower petals all the way to the bed?
Oh, okay.
Petals do work.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, what I'm saying is, you know, the intimacy that we talk about in the time when you and your spouse have that real intimacy in the bedroom. A lot of males, I think, want to get straight to that point. Yeah. But I believe the relationship you build through swing time adds to the possibility of bedtime intimacy, if that makes sense. So if you want to be intimate, men who are married, wash the dishes. Fold the clothes, because your wife will want to be intimate with you if you do all that housework. Praise the Lord.
Awesome.
It works.
Such good advice. Okay,
works, eh?
so Yvonne wants to chime in on that one there.
Hi, everybody. I so totally agree. You do need, I've never heard of swing time, but I love that phrase. So when I studied marriage and couples counseling, one of the people that I studied under was John and Julie Gottman, and they actually did a lab of watching and counseling and working with couples over a period of 20, 30 years. And they had a few things that those master couples actually did to really keep their marriage intact. And one of them was to have at least 20 minutes a day where it was just the two of you to build your friendship and to do things that are not work-related, not talking about the children, although obviously when you have children, they come in. The hardest time that's going to be is when the children are very young. And I love the fact that both of you have worked through that and have done that, because that is what builds the intimacy later on, during the day, during the evening, that type of thing.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So my next question for you guys is, how did you define the roles in your relationship?
I would have to say it took a while. And initially, I work, you do the housework. That's
what we had agreed on.
Yeah. But it took me a while to learn that I have to do housework as well. Took a long time. So, just over time. Over time, with the swing time being a part of our relationship, we started to realise that I needed to do some things as well in the home, and we, switched over finance roles as well at different times. And then, as things got busier and busier, we needed to really make sure we had defined job descriptions in the home.
Yeah.
And it really just takes time.
I think a really important point about having defined roles in the home is that it needs flexibility. So it's going to morph, it's going to evolve, it's going to change right throughout. Well, it could change within a year, depending on pregnancies, sicknesses. I mean, you guys experienced that real early on. So our roles are changing again now that I've entered back into the workforce.
Yeah.
Or probably, So I quit my work a few years ago, 8 years ago, because I couldn't handle it. And him being flexible enough and allowing me to withdraw from that was really important.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the workforce, but I couldn't do it. We had, I think, maybe 5 kids then. So it's gonna change the roles, and there's no definitive line. Like, the husband needs to help out. The lady's not going to go spending all the money that he's working so hard for, or vice versa. Bit of the smarts is good.
Yeah.
Just very, very quickly, I always saw myself as the priest of the home, and so making sure that I would gather the children was something that I thought I should do every time. But there were times when I wasn't able to, like if I had a meeting early, then I would hand the role, and Rachel would gladly get the kids together for worship. So we knew had to be very flexible.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to move into a topic that isn't talked about as much, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about. So, as finance can often be a point of tension in a relationship, how have you worked out this aspect of your life together?
Well, so I'm a millionaire. I just haven't had access because I haven't gone to heaven yet. So other than that, I'm waiting for the blessing. Yeah, we're still working on that.
Okay, that may be something that you could chime in on.
One of the things sorry, can you guys hear me? Great.
Yeah.
One of the things I do when I work with couples in premarital counseling is to have them start working on a budget together. And to know what their goals are, as well as what their thoughts are about things like what type of house do I eventually want to get into? How many children? All those things that we just think, oh, we're going to go along and make those decisions later, or we have talked about them, but we've never talked about them in terms of finance. The reason why that's important is because if you start speaking about finances early and start working with each other, even if one's making, is the main breadwinner and the other one's not working, it still has to be this conversation that you're constantly having and feeling like you're working towards goals together. Just very quickly, I had an incident where I had a couple where the husband was the main breadwinner, and they had been married for quite a few years, and he was going through some financial issues. He didn't want to speak to his wife about it. He didn't want to worry her, so they had never really shared in the conversation around finances. She just always depended on him, and he was happy to have that role. Problem was is that when he was going through financial difficulties, he had nobody to share that with because he didn't want to stress her out. That put a real strain on their relationship. So having that conversation early on, keeping it, and just knowing that both of you having a say-so in how you want to spend that money, but also how you want to save and what are the goals for future is really important.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to switch to tone a little bit. Because I'm a bit of a cheeky character, I want to ask a bit of a cheeky question. This one's for the girls, and because I like to know a bit of juicy details, and I know everyone probably secretly does here, and if you're shaking your head, do not lie in the church. So this one's for the girls. How many dates should you go on before you let him go in for the big pash? And how many dates did you go on before you let him have that kiss? So maybe whatever girl wants to start first. Candace?
Okay. Probably the second date.
Second date, okay. Yep. Okay, Kimberly?
Well, first thing we didn't. No, yes. We just looked at the stars till 3 o'clock in the morning, so that's safe. We did not kiss. I don't even... Yeah, maybe it was 3 or 4. We pecked, but that's it on the second. Maybe 3rd or 4th.
3rd or 4th?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll go down to Rachel.
Right, that's all we have time for.
So what is your question?
So how many dates should you go on before you let him have that kiss?
Okay. So should you go on? Should. Yeah. Well, you didn't ask did, you asked should. So
well, you can answer
I'm suggesting.
We like to know. I'd like to know personally.
If you're doing it right, I would suggest waiting till you're married, because it can lead, if it's really good, to a baby, and you are pregnant and getting married at 8 months pregnant. So I would suggest waiting because it could be just too good.
Awesome. Okay, and Yvonne has something to say.
Okay, so I don't have to reveal any of that about myself and my husband, so I won't. But here's what I do advise. So when I speak about relationships, particularly to people who are single or just dating, I talk to them about the seasons. And the first season, which, as you know, each season is around 3 months, the first season should be one of getting to know each other. When you, and this is all kinds of things, not just about, the lovely things, but about their past, about their, about their family, about their friends, go meet their friends, go meet their family, et cetera, et cetera. When you get into the pash kisses or even further, what happens is that there's a hormone that and it's a chemical reaction. It's called oxytocin. Oxytocin is what comes out when you have a child. That's the bonding chemical reaction. Yeah. When you have that, you can't totally be aware of your red flags. And if you're not aware of your red flags, you're going to stay in a relationship that you kind of know is not good for you. So that's my professional advice, although I know for everybody that does get a little bit difficult.
Okay. So my next question is for the boys. Before we move on to the more serious, back to the serious questions, as a single gal, I need to know, is it true that a way to a man's heart is through his stomach? Tell me, is that a good tactic? Is that a good tactic for me? Yeah.
I said no, but I feel like I'm lying. Let me just say this. Candace is actually like one of the best cooks. I'm not being biased. She's an amazing cook. And she, if I am feeling down or discouraged or annoyed, she probably doesn't know this. Most of the time I reckon food would fix me up. And I think she would know that, but she doesn't make me food, and she talks to me. And she's very good at communicating to me, and that got to my heart. So I would say,
so you would say
no.
Oh, okay. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very thin line, like.
So on the verge of yes. Okay, let's go next to Joel.
Well, are you talking about in the sense of when we just started dating or like now? Because that's two very different questions to me. Because, okay, so if we've just started dating, no way in my mind is Kimbo cooking for me going to really do anything other than maybe just show some properties of a potentially good wife. Like, she's willing to cook, she's willing to work, like do things for me. But I'll talk from a sense of us being married. Yes, for me, if Kimberly was to cook, that's like, because my love language of giving and receiving is both service. So I feel honoured and I feel loved when I'm served. But I also feel like my way of showing love is to serve. So I love cooking, so I do a majority of the cooking at home. So when Kimbo like forcibly takes the reign from me and wants to cook, or like I've come home if she's had a day off or something and has cooked, like to me, that is a very strong way to my heart. But
awesome. Okay, so we'll move on down to Sunny now. At the end there.
Yeah, I say yes. So a way to the man's heart is through the stomach. I say yes, but just make sure you get the right meal. True story. Second date. I get invited to her flat. Super excited, man. I jumped the fence. I'm running over there between my lectures because she lived in the management area and I was in the psychology area. We're both university students. And she backed on the uni, but she invited me over for lunch and I'm like super excited. And I get there and she's she's already had this sort of plan about what shall I make for this guy. And so she thinks Seventh-day Adventist must be vegetarian. I was not. She thought, he mustn't have caffeine because Milo has caffeine, so I'll make him a carob hot drink. And so I sit down for lunch and there's carob, which I've never seen or heard of before, nor tasted. And then there's pasta, which I hate.
Oh, how can they pasta?
And I enjoyed every little bit of it.
He didn't finish any.
I didn't finish it, but I made it look like, this is beautiful. Yeah, ate the pasta. So yes, it works, but I didn't like the meal. But it sort of didn't matter because I was smitten by the person who made the meal, if that makes sense.
Brownie points
So,
there.
you know,
Woohoo.
yes, make the meal, but sort of maybe get it right first. I still love it.
Good one. Okay, so moving back into some of the more serious questions. In some cultures, including mine, showing affection in public and showing affection in general has always been a little bit of a struggle. So do you think showing affection is vital for a healthy and loving relationship? So whoever wants to answer. Anyone got anything? We might go. Okay.
I think it's. I don't actually know, but I think a big part of the answer would be cultural. Yeah, I think you have to understand the culture, the context. Yeah, but I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I do think it's a very personal thing, and there is cultural in there. There's also, again, another conversation between the couple.
Yeah.
Is if one actually is very affectionate, but the other isn't, then is the one that is affectionate going to feel loved?
Yeah.
If the other partner doesn't want to show any kind of affection when they're outside with their friends. So again, it's just this whole conversation that you have to have. Definitely, when you're inside the house or by yourselves, I think some type of affection is really important to show. Whether it's the act of touching, that's an important part of affection.
Yeah. Awesome.
Can I add something? Sorry. Just with Joel and myself, when we first, like our initial starting of dating, we obviously didn't know a lot about each other, but I could tell that Joel was just very touchy, and I was like, I like to be touched, like just on their hand or like his hand on my leg or something, but it wasn't something that I craved. But for him, it seemed like something he like craved, like he needed. And until we actually communicated with each other, and I learned about his him growing up, and he shared some things that made me realize, okay, you didn't get that much when you were younger. So I think really figuring out the person, their backstory, really does help you be more aware of like what they need. Because then I was more aware, okay, now I should hold his leg or something like that. And you would see him like look at his leg like, oh my goodness. And seriously, he was like in the car, he would just be like, wow. And I'm like, it's just my hand. But for him, it was like a powerful, sorry, baby.
Oh.
No, I'm saying that, like, for him, it was a big thing. And for me, it was so little, but like your little things can account to a massive thing for someone else if you actually take the time to be aware of what they need.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And Kenneth has something to say as well.
So for me, early on in the relationship, I knew one of Alex's main love languages is physical touch. So, his way of showing love and receiving love is through physical touch. And so Alex is very affectionate with me. And even in public he is as well. like when we're out and about, he's always cuddling me and holding my hand. And I mean, one time we were in Bunnings and he picked me up and put me over his shoulder and he was walking around with me. So little things like that he does. Like he'll just pick me up and throw me in the air. Or so just like that's his way of showing his love for me. But I know for him, I put in a lot of effort to acknowledge that and to give that back to him. So.
Cute. Okay. Now, moving on to the next question. So, my mum has always said for me to find someone who loves and respects their mother because it'll give me an insight into how he'll treat me in a relationship. Now, for you guys, what's maybe one of the most important things that you were looking for in a partner besides perhaps someone who loves God? Like it could be culture, attractiveness, maybe their cooking, sense of humor, something like that. Anyone? Yeah. Something that was important to you. I think, yeah.
Okay. I think for me, some of the characteristics that really draw me to a person, especially a man, is loyalty.
Yeah.
Is a huge one. Integrity, just honesty, trustworthiness, and just really watching how he treats other people as well, his family, his friends, just seeing how his relationships are outside of our dating relationships.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything else to add to that one?
I will just have to say there has to be some attraction in terms of the physical attraction. Yeah. I hear a lot about people saying, I just love the inside. But you got to have some attraction physically outside as well. And I think over time you develop the understanding of the morals and values.
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
I agree. Okay, Yvonne, you have something to share?
I agree. I think there needs to be some type of physical attraction, but also for the person, for the individuals, they need to know what their value system is. So what is your value system? Because that person is, if they're meeting a lot of your value system, then you're going to be attracted to them. But when you find that you have an important value system that they're not meeting, and where that is on the scale, that's when your attraction doesn't matter at that point. You need to really be going back into your value system and saying, is this somebody I can live with?
Awesome. Okay, so my next question for you all is how important is it to have a healthy support system around your relationship, and what does that perhaps look like for you?
On the way here, we discussed that question, and at first I said no, then I gave it a bit more thought and changed my mind and think it's absolutely important to have a healthy support system. So for me, a healthy support system would be looking back 19 years ago when I had just come into the church, like fresh into a Christian church of any sort. It would have been nice in my first year of marriage to have had some Christian girlfriends. I went to his church and they didn't like me, so canned that out. Sorry, people. And I'd moved away from my family. I'd moved to the place where he was born and bred, so I knew no one yet. He knew I couldn't. We had to stop sending him into the supermarket because he would stop for like half an hour for a bread, and we'd be late home for whatever. But yeah, having a good support system. Older people in the church, older couples, so you can ask them questions. Some people your age, and a nice mix of experiences.
Awesome. Yeah, Joel.
Okay. Firstly, before I say anything that I'm going to say, I think it's incredibly important. But I think something that our relationship has taught us, that a healthy support system is only going to be healthy for you if it is a support system of your relationship. So what I mean by that is, in our experience, we need to have a healthy support system between like me and Kimberly before anyone else can get involved. And for us, we had an unhealthy support system when we first started dating, because what it looked like was Kimberly and Joel have their issues. My issues go to my mum. Kimberly's issues go to her mum and her sisters. Right? So that was a support system that wasn't healthy, because what that meant was it bred animosity between me and Kimberly because we weren't dealing with the issues we were facing. But what it also did, it bred animosity between me and her family and my family and Kimberly. So what we had to come to, and if anyone's realize, and if anyone's actually experienced this, we had to come to a place where our relationship was our own little family. So like everything, the support system was only going to be as good as our relationship between each other was. So if we're having issues, we need to sort that out between us. It doesn't need to go outside. That support system's there to support, not to solve. And I think that's where, in my opinion, a support system is a support system. It's not there to fix your problems. It's there to assist you guys as a couple as you go through life.
And just to go with the what did you say? Not to solve. So for us, instead, we switched it to then be like, okay, we made a rule where he would speak for his family and I would speak for my family. So in any situation, things that we agree on together, I would be like, or let's make it a bit easier. If my family ask me something, I'll be like, okay, let me ask Joel. Let me sort it out with Joel and we'll get back to you. Instead of just making a decision straight away, that's just ostracizing Joel and making it look like, okay, it's just me. But we're a family now, so you have to think about we. It just helps because your family will forgive you, but it's harder to forgive a spouse or a partner. So just be aware about that.
Okay, so we're going to get straight into the next question. And the question I have for you all is, the Bible talks about how important it is to find someone who is evenly yoked. So why do you think this Bible verse is one that is stressed in the Christian community?
Okay, there's a lot of reasons, but the one that I can think of that's the most salient for us is children. So it may be all good and well while you're just the couple, but as soon as there are children involved, then you have issues, especially if you're a Seventh Adventist and you've just married someone who's not. What happens when the children want to play sport? Where do you end up? Which school do they end up in? And so there's always... well, even if they're if they're Christian, but not the same denomination, that can be difficult as well. So it's very, very difficult when it comes to children. So it's always best, I feel, to have the same belief system.
Thanks for that.
I think in my opinion, the biggest issue with being unequally yoked is it is far easier for you to be dragged into the world than it is to drag someone into I won't say the church, because I think church and a relationship with Christ are two separate things. But it's far harder for you to take someone who has been in the world and drag them into a loving relationship with Christ than it is for them to drag you into a world that is all around us. And I think that is going to be the biggest battle for us in this generation, like our generation and generations to come, that the world has, like, secularism has creeped into our homes, into our everything, like even just everywhere around us. It is so easily accessible that it is so easy to slip there. So I think that is the biggest issue with being unequally yoked, that and like even in our relationship, we've had it like at points where we were both trying to head towards God, but our spiritual walks were at two very different stages in life. And for one reason or another, one of us got dragged in one direction, in a negative direction.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to switch lanes a little bit, and I think it's something that Yvonne can chime in on. So I was scrolling through Insta the other day for Rachel and Sunny Instagram. In a relationship, so this was the quote that I saw. In a relationship, one person is always right, and the other person is always male. So that brings me to the question: how do you deal with conflict in your relationship? Or maybe Yvonne, how should we deal with conflict in relationships? Yeah.
All right, I'll give you guys a break. Conflict is always hard. So first of all, as Pastor Joel said, there's always going to be conflict. Well, the statistics are that when you go into a relationship, about 70% of the issues that you face at the beginning of the relationship will stay throughout your relationship. That means only 30% are really totally solvable problems. That seems depressing, but on the other hand, you can look at it and say, well, yeah, there are some challenges with that, but we're not alone. Communication. There's along with that, it is really trying to speak in terms of not blame. So I always talk to the couples and I share with them that, when we want to talk about something, we call what's a soft startup. You have to bring that person on board to really have some of these harder conversations about what that conflict is. And so it would be talking from the I statement, what I am feeling, what I need, what I perceive, giving that other person the benefit of the doubt, looking at it what I call the positive sentiment. This is, when somebody does something, we can automatically think that they meant to do that, they were going to hurt our feelings, they were going to really just do it because they're the selfish one. But we know that person, and we have been in a relationship with that person, and we have to go back to what our memory is, and that is, wait a minute, possibly that wasn't the person's intent. Right? And give them the benefit of the doubt and give them the chance to speak about what it is. If we're constantly in the blame, we're not going to get anywhere and we go in circles. So it is about communication. Yeah. But the way that you do the communication is really to open it up so that you avoid that defensiveness, or what I call stonewalling, which is that shutdown.
Awesome. Okay, so our last question for the night for all of you couples is a topic that perhaps isn't addressed as much in the church. So my question, I'm going to start off with Candice and Alex, and this question is particularly about sex. So my question for you guys, as a dating couple and as a couple that has openly expressed that you want to wait until marriage, how do you combat your sexual temptation in your relationship?
I feel like I kind of touched on that before with the question, the barriers.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's really hard. Like, I've been in a lot of relationships and I slept around a lot, and that baggage that I carry with me definitely has impacted my relationship with Candice. And it's when it comes to sex, it's really hard. Look at her. It's really no, but you know what? It's you just, I don't know how else to say, and I don't have the time to explain why I say this, but you just got to have discipline. You really just got to, and the awesome thing about having because I know I need to be disciplined, but it's awesome because she knows to be disciplined. Like, if anything, she's more disciplined than me. And I remember one time, I tried to make a move on her, and she just pushed me away and laughed. And I was like, I went away. I was just like, good. I was actually really encouraged by that. But and I know it's, you know what I mean. It's. You just You just got to deny yourself, eh?
Good answer. Good answer. Okay. So this next question, last question, is for both of the married couples down the end there. So for Rachel and Sunny, you guys have kids, and Joel and Kimberly for maybe the future kids that you might have. My question to you is, what advice would you give them about sex? So about premarital sex and perhaps promoting waiting until marriage. So what advice would you give to them?
Sorry, can I just jump back to that previous question about sexual temptation? This is probably something that isn't spoken much about, is affairs, you know, and how to avoid them and stuff. And I think, you know, with the way fashion is, and a lot is hanging out these days, and it's a temptation on the brothers, you know, and the husbands, is for the woman to not withhold. I don't know if the council might be going, oh my Lord, that lady is crazy, but, sorry, I don't know, you know, fight for your husband.
Yeah.
You know, don't just dress in trackies all day, every day. He wants to come home to the person he fell in love with, and she probably wasn't wearing some hoary, what's another word for hoary?
Daggy,
Daggy,
sort of
horrible pajamas or whatever, you know. Make yourself appealing. Make yourself to be that person he fell in love with.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
Okay, and so the other question to you guys was, what advice would you give to your kids about sex? Waiting till marriage, or
Oh, absolutely waiting till marriage, or they are full on going to get a hiding.
good one. Okay.
Maybe not a hiding, but you know, it just makes it so much easier if
Okay,
you wait.
we'll move on to the next couple there. Thanks for that, Rachel. Joel and Kimberly.
Well, like, see, I don't want to be a hypocrite to my kids. I want to be able to openly express to them my life experience, because through me, like my life experience, I think honesty breeds honesty. Like, being honest with people, being open with them is encouraging, because I think, especially today, it's not practiced. You know, we live in a world where lying is a lot easier than being honest. And I think what I would want to pass on to my kids, and I plan to, is talking to them about our life experience of how we didn't wait to have sex after we were married, and the absolute strain it put on our relationship. Like, we got put into a place of being in the shoes of a married couple, dealing with married couple issues, and like we were in a relationship that hadn't even had a chance to like grow wings at all in any way, shape or form. And I think that's what I want to pass on to my kids, that the only thing you're doing by having sex before marriage is you're selling your relationship short, because you're not giving yourself the natural progression or time to grow in the relationship before you are exposed to something that is incredibly spiritual and incredibly powerful. Because, I mean, and I think this is, for the guys out there, this is something that has devalued sex in my eyes, and like spiritual sex, and that's porn. So porn has taken like sex in a marriage term and turned it into this just physical interaction. It's just like shaking hands kind of thing. That's what it's devalued it. And I think now people in our day and age view it as just an interaction. It's like an exchange of goods. You know, I exchange this with you.
Like Jose saying the rent thing.
Oh yeah, like you're just in and out for like a weekend. Yeah, well, it's true that, and I think what I want to pass on to my kids is, if you actually want a relationship that's going to be meaningful, you're not going to get that by having sex. And like for us two, like having sex before we were married, it meant that we didn't have a chance to, I guess, figure out who we were before we were in too deep. Like, and I'm not saying I wish I could go back, because we are who we are because of what's happened. And I think, to God's glory, He has used our life experience to transform us. And I think I just want to pass that on to my kids, that it really complicates your relationship if you wanted to go further.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay.
Sorry. Just on that, what I would say to my child or even to my young self and all the girls out there is, well, like our relationship is held by honor. And I feel like for me, my teenage years and all that stuff, I wish I told myself that I should be honored to the max. Like, I am worthy to be treated with respect from a man. I am worthy to have a man who loves me and who honors me completely. And I lost that during like my teenage years, and that made me fall into a trap of a love that was full of nothing but dishonor. And I was trying to I guess what Jose was saying about like, you're this way, they're that way, and you're like, oh, I'm like, I can be their Jesus and make them come to me. No, that wasn't the case. I ended up drifting away from God for 2 years, and that like, I don't know, now looking back, I'm like, I wish I just told myself that I deserve to be honored, and how powerful it is when you realize how much you're worth in God's eyes, that can change your perspective on like what a man should be for you. And Joel was like nothing I ever thought I deserved until I had him, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, thank the Lord. Like, yeah. So yeah, honor is a big thing.
Yeah, awesome.
So what I actually tell my children is to please wait. Otherwise, they may start on the back foot and having children before they are financially ready. So, yeah, we've laid out with our children the ideal plan, and if that doesn't happen, then that's okay, but the ideal plan will set them up financially and career-wise and stuff like that, yeah. So just having realistic, practical, meetable goals, and, you know, being firm about their decisions to make those goals.
Give me 1 second. I would go a little bit further than just say abstain from sex before marriage. I want to tell my children, don't ever be alone with the significant other. Because they can take this on, but there may be that time where they just haphazardly find themselves just alone. Yeah. And we know there are influences there that can lead to different things. So if we can I just would say, just be careful of those times. Yeah. If you can hear those alarm bells, just say bye and separate and go. So definitely. Safe.
Okay. So my children look at our wedding photos and ask why I have a fat stomach, and it's because I had an 8-month-old baby in my stomach. So yeah, starting on the right foot is going to be easier, people. Like, start on the right foot and just wait.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just going on with the honor, and then like me finding my way back to God, which then led to Joel. I like, wherever you are in life, I know that someone is praying for you. If that's a grandma, if that's a mum, if that's a dad, whatever. Someone is praying for you. If you're going on the wrong track or whatever, they still pray for you. And without my parents praying for me, I wouldn't have come back to God, and I wouldn't have been with Joel. So I would tell myself, for my kids, that I need to pray for them every day, even in their good times, but especially when they're hitting a crisis of faith.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for opening up and sharing that advice with us. So we are now going to quickly move on to a Q&A segment, which, Kay, if you can come up.
Hello, everyone. So basically, I just sorted through some of the different questions that we were DM'd on the Instagram page for my Edge Mag. And just because we are running out of time, we have time for just one question. This one? Okay. Okay. What do you do if your partner doesn't think they deserve you?
What do you do if your partner doesn't think they deserve you? What do you do?
I know.
Hard question.
That's a hard one. So I guess in and of that
Adam.
issue,
What's the question again? What's the
Hello.
question
Okay.
again?
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll ask a different one. Okay.
We might move on to unless you guys have something to say. about
oh well, I mean,
that. We might just,
you don't. We can go on to another.
we might just move on to another question.
So, what do you do that keeps God at the center of your relationship?
That's one I can. That's one I can answer. Man, that's a powerful question. That is a question that has many facets and many layers, and I think it's not a question that necessarily applies to relationship. Whether I think that is a question that applies to everyone. And to keep God at the center of your relationship, your life, your career, your studies, whatever it is, like there needs to be a commitment of time. So I guess I'll put it in terms of relationship or friendship. So think about the amount of time you would put into a friendship. You need, and say like going out to Macca's with your friends, you are specifically giving them time. You are giving time to go spend with them. That is how, for Kimberly and I, we have kept God at the center of our relationship. We have taken a time that makes us uncomfortable. It means we have to sacrifice on something. And for us, that's sleep. We sacrifice on sleep. We get up a lot earlier than we previously would have, so that every morning we have like a dedicated hour of time to spend in prayer with God, to spend alone together. But I think the most powerful thing is, although praying together as a couple is very important, having that individual spiritual time so that you are growing your own spiritual walk. And it's not just like, oh, I'm reading my Bible, I read a chapter and I'm done. It's you're actually reading it because you want to absorb the living word. And I think that is how we keep God at the center of our relationship. We are hungrily chasing after God. And it's just a mindset thing. It's a thing of changing how you think about your relationship with God, from it being just a passive action to it actually being a living relationship with a living being.
Awesome. Okay, we'll move on to Alex.
I just wanted to quickly say, and I kind of actually wanted to answer the first question as well. And I just want to quickly say, in the past, I actually said to someone, I don't think, I don't think I'm good enough for you to get out of the relationship. I was wanting an excuse and I was trying to make myself look bad. I'm not saying that's the reason, but every time it's said, but that's something I actually I played. That was a card I played. In terms of keeping the relationship Christ-centered, I found this when me and Kendra started dating. I was reading a lot of relationship books. I love reading, and so I was just reading relationship book, and I was telling her, I was like, man, you got to read this, you got to learn this stuff. And she started to say, man, I got to read this stuff. But then it was the Holy Spirit thing. Candace, how do I say this without sounding weird? She wasn't ready for relationship books. She needed a relationship book with Jesus. And I told her that, I actually told her, don't read any of these relationship books until you read Desire of Ages, Steps to Christ, and then you can read. And you know what? She did. And she fell in love with Jesus so much that we can talk about Jesus like that, and just anything biblical, and because we just both have a passion, and she's also encouraged me very spiritually to do things that I haven't done before, but that's really strengthened my relationship, and we hold each other accountable for that.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to finish up. Yvonne's going to tie it up for us, and then that'll be it for the panel segment.
Okay, so one quick thing. Yeah, that's right. That's fine. That's fine. Just very quickly, for the first question, if you don't think you're worthy for the other person, please go and find somebody to really speak to, identify who you are, because if you go into a relationship in that way, then you're not going to expect to be treated like you are worthy. So I really encourage you to go and speak to somebody and really work through some of those things. As far as being Christ-centered, of course, in my counseling, if I have a couple, and many of these couples that I see are Christian or and some are not. And I find that couples that keep Christ at the center of the relationship by speaking about him, by having those conversations, Alex, you were so right, just having those conversations. Some people might say, oh, you must pray together. No, we all have our own journey. You don't have to do that. That's not like you have to do that, but just really speaking about him, having these conversations, even at times praying together when you're trying to work through something, bringing him back in and knowing that he is at the center and that both of you are in agreement. If you're not in agreement of other things, you're in agreement with that.
Awesome. So that wraps up our panel segment for tonight. So once again, I'd just like to thank you guys for coming up here and being vulnerable and putting your relationships out there for us to hopefully we got some good advice from them. And thank you also, Yvonne, for coming. It was really awesome.